the host with the most amount of names. Today I feel like Laird Man.
Marvelous!
And as always, to the left of me, though it doesn't matter much because you can't see, here to lend a helping hand 23.
Hello.
So, we did it. This is technically the journey proper. The start of Journey proper.
Huzzah.
And it starts with Doctor Strange. I have a bit of a long intro, as well as a lot of notes on... Most of them are on a few things in particular. Hopefully we can get through this quickly. But, unless there's something you just really need to get off your chest at this moment, there is a few things I wish to start off with.
You may start.
All right.
Off that.
As for why we're doing Doctor Strange and Age of Ultron in the same one, I actually watched all three of these the same day. By three, I mean Deadpool as well. I actually watched Deadpool first, but I wasn't considering it part of the journey. Probably should have, but oh well. And as for why I chose these movies specifically, Deadpool, I think I explained it there. Deadpool is something had been hyped up for at the time it was hyped up. Taught me a lot about how much my tastes have changed. I probably would have loved that movie as a kid, but just kind of miffed on it as an adult. It's still a good movie though. Doctor Strange is interesting. So for a while, I did sort of kind of keep up with the MCU, but then Doctor Strange was coming out, and I was supposed to see it with my mom. She went to see it with someone else, like a boyfriend or something. And then I remember we had like a conversation in the car where she could have swore I was there seeing it with her, and then I basically had to explain, no, I wasn't. And then I saw like the look on her face of like, oh wait, that wasn't him. I guess from there, mostly also because I didn't have much agency, I just kind of fell out of the MCU. I decided I would make this my first one since I got snubbed. And it's also one of the ones that was, of like the Marvel movies, it was the only one that I had actually been looking forward to. Like Iron Man I saw because it was there. The Avengers proper saw because we just went to the theater. Dad was like, hey, let's go. Theater. Just saw it. No, I'd never heard of the movie until that day, but I liked it. Ant-Man also saw in theaters just because went out. Family get together kind of things. But this was the only one I was actually like looking forward to. I remember doing wiki skims on Agamotto, Vishanti, the Fall Team, things like that. I don't remember much of what I learned, other than that they are Sorcerer Supremes of past. Do you know anything about Doctor Strange?
What I know about Doctor Strange was... all I know he was the Sorcerer Supreme in like many other types of media. He did like many dimension things. Mm-hmm. I've heard of some of them and like I was confused.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how any other word to describe it. And I think there was a dream realm too in one of them, but other than that, nope.
Alright. A bit like today, Doctor Strange is one of those characters I've just like, for whatever reason, my mind has resolved to not do a wiki skim on. Everything around him, fair game. So I did like quite a bit of skimming on Shuma Gorath and Dormammu, things like that. But for whatever reason, my mind had decided I am not going to look up Doctor Strange. So like I didn't even know his cape was a sentient being. I knew nothing about Doctor Strange going into this. Also, I mentioned in the interlude that I'm going to start posting clips of the Journey Alpha. I want people to keep in mind that during that period, I actually did not use Disney+. I had resolved to not get Disney+, because I figured it was a waste of money. I was instead watching these movies through Amazon, which not the most relevant in this set of movies, but it will become relevant later, as well as explain kind of the process of Journey Alpha and like why notes are like so brief and the imprecision of my thoughts and things like that. Oh, also it was during the time that I took notes after the movie instead of during, which may also explain why my notes for this movie are just ginormous compared to what I did originally. Speaking of notes, helping hand, take it away.
Well, you asked me a question, and I thought I would answer it first.
Oh, speaking of which, sorry. I do want to try something different. If it's relevant, I may interrupt you with one of my notes instead of just waiting for you to finish.
Okay.
But go ahead.
How far should a comic movies go to appeal to the non-comic audience? I think there needs to be what I wrote is I think there's
Please don't say there needs to be a balance. I need you to elaborate more than that.
I need more. I think I think there needs to think like what should be introduced to new, like some new things new for the comic people who ever seen things, and some things old, which to help the comic people to like, yeah, I remember that.
Okay.
So a balance. And people who are new to these things can just like, ooh, that's so cool, and like the comic people can just say, yeah, isn't it?
Okay.
You have so much source material that you can totally introduce new ideas while also introducing old ideas into the source material from the source material.
Mm-hmm.
Source material can be like a guide to help you through this thing, through the making a new movie. If with that you can make something that everyone can enjoy, as long as it's good, it should be fun, right?
Okay. All right. That kind of reminds me of my experience with Watchmen the comic, Watchmen the movie, and The Boys the comic, and The Boys the ongoing show. Whereas I kind of felt like I wasted halfway through the Watchmen movie. I felt like I wasted my time because it was just the comic. And what I was actually interested in is the things that they changed. It was enough that actually, if you are someone that has read the comic, you may find something in this movie that's not just a complete retelling of what you've already read, but slightly worse because it's truncated. Whereas something like The Boys the show, I was so interested in that show, and then I go to the comic and it's very different, but it's great because it's different.
What I'm trying to get at is like all that Marvel is doing now. I feel like they need to use more of the source material,
as
more of it as more to help with what they're going for. Like pick an arc what you want to do from the comics, so you can introduce that, and you can just do that as like the main arc for each like big phase.
I've been meaning to do a lot more wiki skims into how the movies are made, a bit like how I did for the Batman. From the ones that I have done, it seems like they're kind of doing that. They're taking a story, taking a lot of elements from it, maybe mixing it with something else.
Some parts are, but some movies are. I don't know. I feel like they're taking too many creative liberties with.
Is there any like movie in particular? I can think. Not that I want to call myself a Rhine reader. I can think of a series in particular that might be coming to your mind.
I have a series. I have what comes to my mind,
okay.
but I'm not gonna say it out loud. When I first rewatched, because I've watched this movie before Doctor Strange, a lot of things I didn't remember, and a lot of things I did.
Okay.
First thing, I don't remember the beginning cutscene at all, like for setting up the ancient one. I didn't remember it at all, and like people were like, oh, now I remember. I don't remember this at all.
All right.
And then, but I love the foreshadowing. Like the beginning of the movie is like when he says hypocrite.
Yeah.
It was like perfect foreshadowing. I remember Doctor Strange being 100% jerk.
Oh really?
Yeah, in the beginning. But then I remember like, oh, he's not 100% a jerk. He is a jerk still, but he does help people. He does surgeries and stuff. He refuses to mess with people he doesn't think he can succeed in, which is like an interesting parallel. Like he mainly thinks about like what interesting.
He thinks more about his image than helping people.
Yeah, I know. So he's not a complete jerk, but he is still a jerk. I love the representation right before the fall when Doctor Strange is like being reckless driving and everything, and then the crash just comes out of nowhere.
So brutal too.
Yeah, like oh god, and the Strange is trying absolutely everything to recover until he's like absolutely broke eventually at the end. I think it was like heart wrenching to see. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention this. There are more important things in life. Like what? Than your career. Like what? Like you. That was like, oh.
Yeah, it's such a heartbreaking moment.
Yeah, I was like, wow. Like, that surely shows what Doctor Strange was like before.
I've written in my notes that he's a Tony Stark that actually gets humbled.
Yeah.
Quite significantly, actually.
When they learn that when Strange learns about someone recovering completely, he immediately goes to them and
Well, at that point, he's out of options.
yeah, out of options. Yeah, and I'm just imagining.
Also, it's theoretically impossible what happened.
My favorite part of the thing is like Ancient One saying, "Open your eyes," and the just wildness of it. The effects on this thing is amazing. I miss those. They're gone. I love how Strange is brought in by one person who like sticks to the rules, and I know in the future how he will fall.
Mordu?
Mordo, yeah.
Alright.
Yeah, I love that. Like, the Ancient One didn't want him in, and he wanted to bring him in. And I'm like, how the perspective is going to change after this is just like, wow. I like Doctor Strange starts becoming a prodigy at this, and then when he immediately learns about the stone, like the reverse time thing, he when he hears about the pages, as soon as he gets the opportunity, he goes for it. There's like no hesitation, and like you should have. The warnings are on like the end.
Yes.
I'm like, what? I'm like, why?
That's magic.
Sending Steven to Mount Everest was the powerful scene after. That's like going back. I thought Wong was taken more seriously in the first movie than like I was. But then I remember like, oh, then I see all the Strange does to Wong, like stealing his books, messing with him. I'm like, okay, never mind. I can see where his current iteration is. I like Steve's reaction, like when he first hears the main villain's plan, like how time is the enemy and stuff.
Yes, I should have written that down. That speech.
Yeah, and it was like, wow, Steven was kind of falling for it for a little bit.
Well, so the problem, there's a lot of like speeches like this throughout media in general, any sort of villain, to where there's quite a bit of truth to what he's saying. It's the motive behind it, I guess. Yeah. That's not necessarily good.
The Ancient One using Dormammu's power, I remembered that, and now I still think it's a very good scene.
Is it Dormammu's power, or is it just like the power of like the Dark Realm?
I think it's the Dark Realm, but it's still technically Dormammu's power.
Because there are other beings that exist within the Dark Realm that aren't Dormammu.
I did not know that.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess I should have done that. I should have revealed that in the wiki skim. Yes, there are other beings besides Dormammu that exist within the Dark Realm. In fact, Dormammu himself, I think he has a sister. But there are obviously more of his race, as well as like enemies of like his race and things like that. It's some really interesting stuff that they probably won't get through in the MCU.
How does the connection to the Dark Realm make them more powerful in the mirror dimension? I wanted more explanation to that.
I don't know, actually.
It's just like another dimension gives you more power in this dimension.
Maybe it's like this mirror dimension exists because of Dark Realm meddling or something.
Yeah, that might be it. I wanted to ask about origins of Dark Dimension and Dormammu, but I wanted Dormammu. I've come to bargain. The time when Wong died on the scene, and when Doctor Strange reversed time and everything crazy about that, the bill comes due always. Well, apparently not for Doctor Strange's plan, because it never came.
And so we don't know that, actually. There is going to be a third movie. Yeah. Though I have a feeling it's not.
Yeah. I like how Doctor Strange's hands are not immediately fixed at the end of the movie either. He only into later movies his hands are fixed.
I don't know if they are fixed, actually. It's like implied that he's using magic. There's scenes throughout MCU showing like Doctor Strange fighting, and when he's in like stressful situations, his hands start to shake. Yeah. Because he's focusing his magic on fighting instead of his hands. Which is a really cool detail that it remains consistent throughout MCU of his hands are not good. I don't know if they ever will be. And when he's not using his magic to focus on making his hands good, they're shaky, as they should be. I may have missed something later that like, oh yeah, his hands are totally fixed now.
The big thing I find interesting is like at the end of the movie, the person who Doctor Strange met, who recovered completely from his injury, gets sucker punched and took away his powers, and this is never brought up again.
Yes.
That bothers me.
Yeah.
That's my pet peeve about it. Like when things are not brought up again. Anyway, that's pretty much all I wanted to say about that.
All right. Well, we've got quite a few things to talk about. Well, since we're so close to Mordu, while we're on the topic of Mordu, I absolutely hate the build-up they gave this guy, only for it to just completely vanish after this movie.
Oh my god.
And I have a feeling they're not going to get into it in movie 3. Just like so much build-up for what is a rather cool character. From what I've seen in wiki skims as well, he is a significant and cool character. It's just, for whatever reason, they decided not to pursue what is an obvious, like, really good second movie.
Instead of the Multiverse of Madness, which is not bad.
It's not bad. And I do like the direction they went with it. It's just, they had a giant loose end.
The loose end will never get solved.
Or maybe it will.
Hope so.
I highly doubt it, though. It looks like they're bringing the Eternals into it.
Oh gosh.
That's actually a good thing, because I've noticed that Doctor Strange handles more... Because each of these, like, hero groups, they can typically be divided into groups, have their own domain. Yeah. Avengers care more about the Earth. Pretty, obvious. And then there is people like the Guardians of the Galaxy. They're all about space, and not cosmic Marvel, but spatial interplanetary Marvel. Whereas Doctor Strange is getting into cosmic Marvel. I wouldn't be surprised if at some point we go see the Home of the Celestials and the Beyonder or something makes an appearance in a Doctor Strange movie. He's getting into some of the more powerful entities of Marvel. Oh, Dormammu. Perfect example. Someone who exists, a being who exists outside of time, which is not something I don't think the Avengers could ever handle. And technically, he doesn't. But we'll get to that in a second. I like how combat works in this movie, but I completely understand why people tend to not like it. It's a lot of bending reality around you instead of direct confrontation, and at first glance, it looks a bit... Well, it might still be over the top. At first glance, it looks over the top. However... Oh, I forgot to show you that. Hang on a sec. I need you to pretend for the sake of editing magic that you have already seen this video and you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Okay.
In fighting games, there is a term that has been coined. A term that has been coined, the Daigo Shoryu. If you were to watch Daigo, especially in like Street Fighter 4, or actually Street Fighter 2 as well, if you were to watch Daigo play a Dhalsim, you would see him standing near full screen, and just occasionally he would do a raw dragon punch. Raw Shoryu. And for a while, you're gonna watch it and go, why, unless he nails it the first time, you're gonna watch it and go, why is he doing that? Especially when Dhalsim is like all the way over there on the other side of the screen. And then, especially if you've never seen like Dhalsim in action, and then you see all of a sudden he does one of those, and Dhalsim just goes flying back as if he's gotten hit, because he did. And you go, what just happened? So for those of you who don't know, Dhalsim is that character in Street Fighter who has the super stretchy limbs. His limbs go about full screen. But what you probably don't know is that you can actually hit those limbs. So what Daigo is doing is he is anticipating the opponent Dhalsim is going to try and hit him. So he's doing a move that has invincibility to strikes in order to hit his limbs as he's trying to hit, or as the Dhalsim is trying to hit him. Although it happens so fast that it kind of looks like the Dhalsim player just got hit by a DP from full screen. I say all that to say that a lot of the combat in this movie is a lot of like anticipation of something that you don't even have evidence is going to happen. Perfect example is actually that first scene you mentioned of the what is her name? Ancient One. Yeah. Fighting goons 1 through 5 and Big Bad. I forgot their names. There's a big emphasis on like bending things into shape right before pushing them into an obstacle. So let me see here. There's a moment where she turns the building behind, or one of the buildings behind them, into like a rolling crush, and then she starts messing with the windows to where if you were to like step into it, you'd fall through. You watch that scene the first time and you think, why isn't she just going up there and like hitting them? And then you see the dudes come after her. She like steps out of the way and pushes them into a window, and they never return. Oh, okay. She's anticipating that they're going to come after her, and in response, she is going to set up traps and push her opponents into them. The rolling crush is there to make sure that, loose ends and things like that. It's a bit of the problem. Not that I should be relating this too much to fighting games, but it's a bit of the problem of watching zoners. Oh, it's just fireball spam from full screen. No, actually, it's a lot of like small decision making to put your opponent into a box and then force them to make mistakes and capitalize on those mistakes. Also, the Doctor Strange movies in general have a big emphasis on bending things into shape instead of just conjuring or outright transformation. I don't know if you've like seen a whole lot of magic in other media. Typically, if I wanted to make a room like this into Africa or something, I just wave my hand, and as I wave my hand, let's say I start at like one corner, where I start moving my hand, it's going to just fade into Africa. Whereas in Doctor Strange, the walls would start bending, the windows would start caving in, they'd start flipping and dipping, and gears would pop out of nowhere, and then all of a sudden we'd be in Africa. Which is weird. Like that church scene. They're going to Dormammu's realm. Instead of just like, poof, I'm there. Yeah. The church starts bending and moving away and gears come out of nowhere. And then it's implied that they're in Dormammu's realm. This movie has a lot of... Feel free to chime in at any point.
Okay. The movie, I feel like that, like, the gears and the dimension things. Like, I like the mirror dimension, like, stopping, like, the, like, explosion from... what's going to destroy the tower, represent that it was the tower, the mirror dimension is a separate like world and entity, and even though it backfires on Doctor Strange, which not very well explained.
Mirror dimension is actually a pretty smart decision. I don't know if it's like in the comics or whatever, but a really smart decision to go crazy with the effects without having to actually explain how it works in the real world.
Because it's a completely different dimension. What I wanted Multiverse of Madness to be was it's like a multiverse of dimensions. That's what I wanted that to be. It didn't turn out what I wanted it to be.
Alright. We'll do more of that when we get to that movie, but this movie has themes of messages, or themes of the message, the world does not revolve around you. Although it falls flat a little bit because Doctor Strange becomes both one of the most important and one of the most powerful characters in the MCU to date.
True.
Quite literally, he is part of the reason that they were able to defeat Thanos. Oh, also, this is... I should have wrote his name down. I think it's like Benedict Cumberbatch or something. The guy who actually plays Doctor Strange. Really good actor.
Yeah.
There isn't a whole lot of build-up for the character, especially for like... I'm talking about like the beginning mostly. But you immediately care about the character. Like, it's actually not that long that we're in the movie before his hands go to shit. But you immediately care. I think I said it during your notes. Like I said during your notes, he is a Tony Stark that actually gets humbled. To a significant degree. Tony Stark doesn't really... It isn't until, like, what, Iron Man 3? that we really see this guy get broken down. Whereas for Stephen Strange, it's immediate. Maybe because they didn't anticipate him becoming one of the more popular characters, but...
Like immediately broken down on what he is.
Speaking of which, the forget everything you know scene. I don't know how much you know about the Cthulhu mythos. We're going all over the place in this episode.
Yep. Yeah, there's not going to be consistency on this one.
But I don't know how much you know about the Cthulhu mythos. Ooh, in fact, have you ever heard of or played Call of Cthulhu?
I played Call of Cthulhu once.
Okay. How much do you remember of it, actually?
I remember trying to investigate a murder, immediately fighting a monstrosity from a witch which summoned it by sacrificing blood, and I'm the only one survived because I ran away. As everyone else gets murdered by a monstrosity of other worlds.
Unlike a game like D&D, you're not a hero in that game.
No.
And the point of the game is to go insane. You're typically not winning anything. You're investigating, like you're some dude in like I think it's like the 50s or something. You're some dude or girl investigating some strange things, and then you may run into an outer being and go insane. And not to say that that's one to one with what's happening in Doctor Strange, but it's very reminiscent of like that sort of mythos of learning the real secrets of the universe. Like there are things out there, Dormammu being one of them, that are just outside of your imagination. You couldn't imagine what's actually out there. Cosmic Marvel, a myth, but Shumagorath.
What?
Dormammu, Eternity, entities like that.
I heard about Eternity, but I don't know much about him.
Shumagorath?
No, Eternity.
Oh, you don't know much about him?
Mm-mm.
Okay. I mean, I can't imagine it's going to become... No? Okay. There's quite a few movies now that have made reference to seeing eternity. And, like, theoretically, if you meet him, you'll get a wish granted or something. In fact, actually, shit. I accidentally spoiled a movie.
Good job.
Oh, well. Anyway, I love how much they're playing up into this, like, Cthulhu-esque outer myths. This cosmic magic marvel going insane, seeing the truth. And, like, that's also another moment where he gets, like, super humbled. They also play into the trope of you wouldn't expect a female doctor. So, like, he goes to meet the Ancient One, and he immediately assumes it's that guy who's sitting there. Which, to be fair, I imagine most of us would.
Yeah.
Because he's sitting there.
Yeah.
Only to turn around and see, like, a lady handing him tea. And, oh, that's the Ancient One.
Well, I knew too much about the Ancient One. Not knew too much about it. I heard about too much about the Ancient One before the movie, so I probably didn't get the joke. It do quite a payoff for me.
Alright.
I knew what the Ancient One looked like.
Oh, as well as, like, she starts bringing up books of, like, acupuncture and Buddhism.
Yeah.
Like, what does this have to do with whatever you just did for that guy? Quite a bit, actually. Most of the spiritual aspect of it. But that like, what you thought you knew is not incorrect, but it's wrong. Oh, as well as, like, the open your eye. Like, he gets hit with Dunning-Kruger kind of hard. You know the Dunning-Kruger effect.
Not really.
Alright, there's a phenomenon where if you don't know people who don't know anything about a subject proclaim things about it proudly, as if they did know, and then they start to learn about that thing, and their confidence in proclaiming anything about it starts to go down, and then as they learn more, it starts to go back up. Like that, dumb people say things proudly, but as if it's fact, because they don't know anything about it, and then they actually learn, like, a little bit about it, and they go, oh wait, I actually don't know a whole lot about this. They get meek up, not as proud to proclaim their thoughts about it. And then they actually become an expert, and oh yeah, at that point they can proclaim quite a bit about whatever subject it is. Abstract thinking here on Marvel's journey.
I understand that, and that makes sense.
Alright. He gets hit with the horrifying truths of the world.
I like how he touches butterfly. I'm gonna say this scene, and then it's like, boof.
Oh yeah. That's even. Oh, you were mentioning about, like, special effects and things. There's one more movie on this list that goes to the level, not quite to the level that this movie does, but pretty close. Okay. I think you'll be happy about. But I do wish more movies would embrace the CGI, I guess, so to speak.
Yeah.
Like, bro, take me to CGI land.
Take me,
please. While we're on the topic of CGI and creativity, I do like how creative they get in these fights. Not just with the magic, but the circumstances of the fights. So it's not just we need to meet up here and bend reality and summon gears. Why are gears? Where are all these gears coming from? Like, I didn't write it down, but, like, now that I think about it, there's so many gears in this movie.
I think it's because of the kaleidoscope effect.
Anyway, the Astroform fight. So stuff like that where he's literally fighting for his life.
Yeah.
And the astral plane of all things. The time reversal fight, actually. You have to, like, break out of your time loop first before you can resume fighting, while everything's, like, starts flying in reverse time around them. The Mirror Dimension New York battle.
Yeah. Where
they took you to CGI land.
CGI land.
They got you 3 tickets, man. Like, cubed streets,
everything's upside down and up, then left and right.
Yeah, man, they took you to CGI though. The utmost spectacle. It also uses a lot of like tessellations, I've noticed. Gears and tessellations prevalent throughout these, like anything in this movie really. I also like that Doctor Strange actually has to practice and study in this movie.
Oh yes, not the instant prodigy.
Yes. Whereas someone like an Iron Man, he builds a suit and now he's powerful. Or Hulk, he just is. He just is the Hulk. Captain America gets drugs. Doctor Strange actually has to study. He gets a humbling moment and he actually has to practice magic. And obviously they gotta truncate it for time, and it's still an action movie at the end of the day. But it is clear that yes, he has to study and practice, which is rather rare in movies in general, but
yeah,
especially a superhero movie.
Superhero movies are just like, I am the best.
I think that's also another reason I really wanted to see this movie is that one, he's not the best immediately. Two, he uses magic and he actually has to practice that magic. Unlike someone like, an Iron Man, he has tech. But I like the fact that this guy just straight up uses magic. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's not like magic. It's not like a surrogate or substitute to magic. It's just magic.
Which we always suspend our disbelief on what magic is because how variety.
Because technically magic can do anything.
Yeah.
But although this one does have some rules. They get broken from time to time, but they do have
rules.
Yeah, the making hand circles is pretty consistent. Speaking of study and practice, he defeats one person in this movie, and it's not the villain. He straight up kills that one guy who fought him trying to take his life, but like it was mostly self-defense. Outside of that, he doesn't actually defeat anybody.
No, he is not stronger. He's not at his best yet in this movie.
I love that. Like, he goes up to Dormammu, and he can't defeat him. He cannot. I think even now, he could not defeat him. But, he can stop him. Dormammu hates time. I love that. He just hates time. I don't know why, but he just hates time.
Time as a concept is annoyance. But how do you continue on with your existence if you don't have time?
Open your eyes. Forget everything you know.
Time cannot flow the same
There
way.
are things outside of this reality that you cannot even begin to imagine. Other than that, utmost spectacle. Man, that eternal life shit must be something else. I wonder why that's such a trope in movies.
Eternal life?
The villain wanting eternal life and therefore doing the things he does. Because it's kind of been repeatedly bashed over our heads. Maybe it's something recent. Like, it's been repeatedly bashed over our heads. Like, actually, it's not that great.
It's not the best.
Because, like, there's so many things that go wrong in life that are only fixed by death. And also, life kind of loses meaning when you have infinite of it.
Yeah, and, who knows how true that is. No, we can't test the concept.
Alright. I wasn't expecting you to get into the question of the day, at the very start.
Yeah.
So I probably should have interrupted you earlier. But the reasoning behind that question of the day. So there are times that gatekeepers appear to tell people they can't like a thing that they've liked for a while because you just got into it. Whereas I, the gatekeeper, have liked this thing for a while. And especially just starting out, obviously, that's stupid. That's, everyone should be able to enjoy something like this. And the more I watch movies like this, the more I kind of get it. I don't fully agree with the philosophy, but especially nowadays, the prevailing narrative is, or a somewhat gaining narrative is, we don't need to stop gatekeeping. We need to gatekeep our things more. I feel like they could have went harder with this movie, but they need to appeal to a broad audience that isn't going to appreciate the things that they could have put into this movie. So this is also something of a problem with the next movie, or not the next movie on the journey, but the next Doctor Strange movie, Multiverse of Madness. Since we talked about it so much, it was going to be a horror movie, and it was going to be the first horror movie that I ever wanted to see. They pared it down quite a bit. And then I watched the movie, and I'm like, man, I actually kind of wanted to see the horror movie, the horror version of this.
Yeah. I definitely want to see the horror version of it.
But what do you think about like the idea of? Do you think we need to gatekeep more? Actually,
I honestly, since I'm not a big like thing in Marvel, there's some things that like people who are just introduced and not who don't know the movie should not be creating the new stuff for the comic. I think these people should know before they create new stuff for the comics and stuff. But anyone should be able to watch it and enjoy it.
All right.
Just don't bring new people in and just like, okay, here, create stuff and something you never heard of before.
Well, so to go back to the question though of like, do you think that we should be changing? Do you think they could afford to go harder into things that only a fan of the comic would get? And it doesn't even have to necessarily be comics. So movies, TV shows, books even, for some reason. This is pervaded into books. I need to change this thing to fit a more general audience because I'm like afraid of something. I don't know. Or I want to gain a bigger audience or...
I don't think so.
Alright.
But my main concern is like, this is what's happening a lot. People bringing in people who are not a fan of the comics to create new versions of the comics.
Okay.
That's what I feel like. No, you need to know the source material before you continue with the source materials because that's happened before and it doesn't usually end well.
For those of you who may be a bit lost because I'm terrible at explaining things, another pretty good example of what I'm talking about that at least most of you should be able to relate to is video games. Hey, pretend I'm some person on Twitter. Horrible thought, I know.
Oh no.
I think we should add easy mode to Dark Souls.
I know the reaction. I know the reaction's gonna happen.
I wish you could have seen his face.
I'm like, oh, I know the reaction. I don't play Dark Souls, but I know how that would go. I'm like, oh god, you're going to be destroyed.
It seems like rather a simple request, but there's an audience that's already here, and they do not want easy mode. Should we accommodate these new people and attempt to gain a bigger audience, or should we? I'm leaving that up to the audience. That is your question of the day. Although we technically have another one.